The scandalous and shocking origins of NATO, 10 unbelievable facts.
The foundation of NATO in 1949 marked a turning point in global politics, creating a military alliance that defined the Cold War and continues to shape international relations.
However, the story of NATO's creation is riddled with secrets, controversies, and shocking decisions that raise questions about the alliance's true motives.
From unexpected Soviet overtures to the prioritization of anti-communism over democracy, these 10 scandalous facts reveal the hidden history behind NATO's formation.
Number 1. Soviet Union wanted to join NATO.
In May 1954, the Soviet Union made an unexpected proposal. It formally requested to join NATO.
The reasoning provided by Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov was that such a move would contribute to global peace and stability.
At the time, Soviet leaders claimed they wanted to prevent the militarization of Europe and sought collective measures to ensure security. However, many in the West believed this was a strategic maneuver aimed at dismantling NATO from within or gaining access to sensitive military plans. The US, UK, and other member states outright rejected the proposal, citing irreconcilable differences in values and governance systems. British diplomat Sir William Hayter commented on the matter, saying, "The bear is knocking at the door, but we dare not let it in." This rejection fueled the Soviet Union's narrative that NATO was an aggressive, anti-communist bloc, further intensifying Cold War tensions.
The following year, in response to NATO's continued expansion, the Soviets formalized the Warsaw Pact in 1955, cementing the division of Europe into opposing military alliances. Do you think history would have unfolded differently if NATO had accepted the Soviet Union? Share your thoughts below. Number 2. NATO wasn't just about defense.
While NATO's 1949 creation was officially framed as a defensive alliance against potential Soviet aggression, its underlying motivations were far more complex. Western leaders were deeply concerned about the possibility of communist uprisings in war-ravaged Western Europe. Countries like France, Italy, and Greece had strong communist parties that were gaining traction among disillusioned workers and war survivors. NATO became a key tool for the US to stabilize these nations by securing military and economic dominance. The Marshall Plan, 1948 to 1952, laid the economic groundwork, while NATO provided a military framework to ensure that Western Europe remained aligned with the US and not the Soviet Union. As US Secretary of State Dean Acheson famously summarized, NATO's goal was to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. This strategic use of NATO as both a defensive and geopolitical tool created long-term stability in Europe, but critics argue it also deepened the East-West divide.
Number 3. Iceland's membership despite lacking a military. Iceland stands out as one of NATO's most unusual members. As a founding member in 1949, it joined the alliance despite having no standing army, a status that remains unchanged to this day. Instead, Iceland relies entirely on its NATO allies for defense. So, why include a country without military forces? The answer lies in geography. Iceland's location in the North Atlantic made it a crucial outpost for monitoring Soviet naval activities during the Cold War. The Keflavik Air Base became one of NATO's most critical facilities for surveillance and anti-submarine operations. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, Iceland played a key role in tracking Soviet submarines moving toward the US coastline. Although the base was closed in 2006, Iceland continues to host NATO exercises and remains vital for the alliance's transatlantic logistics. Iceland's unique membership highlights NATO's flexibility in valuing strategic positioning over military might. Number 4. France opposed NATO's command structure. From the beginning, France maintained a contentious relationship with NATO, largely due to Charles de Gaulle's firm belief in preserving French sovereignty. De Gaulle was deeply uncomfortable with NATO's centralized command structure, which he felt placed European security decisions in the hands of the United States. In a bold move in 1966, France withdrew from NATO's integrated military command, forcing the alliance to relocate its headquarters from Paris to Brussels. De Gaulle insisted that France must maintain an independent nuclear deterrent and avoid excessive reliance on US forces. He famously said, "A nation that does not control its own military destiny is no longer a sovereign nation."
France remained a political member of NATO but operated independently for over 4 decades. It wasn't until 2009, under President Nicolas Sarkozy, that France fully rejoined NATO's military command, a decision that sparked debate among French citizens about national autonomy.
Number 5.
Canada was a key architect. Canada's role in NATO's creation is often overlooked, but it was pivotal. Canadian diplomat Lester B. Pearson played an instrumental role in drafting the North Atlantic Treaty, emphasizing collective security and peaceful conflict resolution. Pearson believed that a united alliance was essential not just for defense, but also for fostering international cooperation after World War II. Canada also contributed significantly to NATO's military operations. In the early years, Canadian forces were among the largest contributors to NATO exercises in Europe. During the Korean War, Canada's close collaboration with other NATO members solidified its reputation as a reliable middle power. Pearson's leadership earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1957, underscoring his belief in diplomacy. He once remarked, "The collective security of NATO is not only a military matter, it is a promise to uphold the principles of peace."
Number 6. NATO's formation had CIA involvement.
The role of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, in NATO's formation is a lesser-known but significant chapter in Cold War history.
The CIA was actively involved in securing European support for NATO during the late 1940s.
It provided intelligence assessments highlighting the Soviet threat and worked behind the scenes to sway skeptical European governments. Additionally, the CIA supported covert operations to suppress communist movements in countries like Italy and Greece, ensuring their alignment with the West. By 1949, many European nations saw NATO not only as a defensive alliance but also as a means to counter internal subversion. This dual purpose, as combating Soviet aggression and preventing domestic communist uprisings, was a key factor in NATO's creation.
The CIA's involvement reinforced the US's leadership role in NATO and established intelligence sharing practices that remain a cornerstone of the alliance today. Number 7.
Portugal's fascist regime was accepted. When Portugal joined NATO in 1949, it was ruled by António de Oliveira Salazar, a dictator who led one of Europe's last remaining fascist regimes. Portugal's membership was controversial, as many questioned how an alliance that championed democracy could include an authoritarian government. However, Cold War pragmatism prevailed.
NATO prioritized anti-communism over democratic principles, valuing Portugal's strategic location.
The Azores Islands, controlled by Portugal, were essential for transatlantic operations. They provided air bases critical for NATO's logistical and reconnaissance missions. Despite ongoing criticism, Portugal remained a loyal NATO member until Salazar's regime ended in 1974.
Number 8.
Article 5, Collective Defense, wasn't tested until 2001. Article 5, the heart of NATO's collective defense principle, was a historic innovation when it was introduced. It stated that an attack on one member would be treated as an attack on all. Surprisingly, despite numerous Cold War crises, Article 5 was never invoked during that period. Instead, it was first used in response to the September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks on the United States.
After the attacks, NATO allies provided intelligence, logistical support, and troops for operations in Afghanistan.
This marked a significant shift in NATO's mission, from focusing on state-on-state conflicts to addressing global terrorism.
In many ways, this event redefined NATO's purpose in the 21st century. Number 9. NATO's intervention in Yugoslavia, a controversial first.
In 1999, NATO launched Operation Allied Force, its first major military intervention in Europe, targeting the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Serbia and Montenegro. The campaign, lasting from March 24 to June 10, aimed to halt ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, where Serbian forces under Slobodan Milosevic were accused of atrocities against Kosovar Albanians, displacing over 850,000 people. Without UN approval, NATO conducted 38,000 airstrikes, targeting military installations and infrastructure.
However, some strikes caused civilian casualties, such as the bombing of a passenger train and the Chinese embassy in Belgrade.
The operation sparked global criticism, with Russia and China condemning it as a violation of sovereignty, while NATO defended it as a necessary humanitarian mission.
The intervention ended with the Kumanovo Agreement, withdrawing Serbian forces from Kosovo and establishing NATO peacekeepers, KFOR. Though it prevented further ethnic violence, the campaign remains a divisive chapter in NATO's history. Number 10. NATO's formation excluded Germany. At NATO's founding in 1949, Germany was excluded due to lingering resentment and mistrust from World War II. However, the outbreak of the Korean War and growing Soviet aggression in Europe forced a reassessment. In 1955, West Germany was admitted to NATO, under strict conditions, including limited rearmament. The Soviet Union fiercely opposed this decision, viewing it as a direct threat. In response, it formed the Warsaw Pact in 1955, uniting Eastern Bloc nations in a counter-alliance. West Germany's inclusion was a turning point that solidified NATO's role as the cornerstone of Western defense against the Eastern Bloc.